Access Fort Wayne offers reflections of our community. Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne are a service of the Allen County Public Library. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting organizations. For more information about creating your own television program with Access Fort Wayne, call 421-1250.
Hello, and welcome to our show, The American Veteran. I'm Dale Parrish, your host. Carl Fowler is co-host. Also sitting in with us today is Phil Plaster, an Afghanistan veteran. Our guest today is Bernard Lee. Welcome to our show, Bernie.
Thank you for having me.
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps 22-year veteran.
22. When did you first go in?
1946 after high school.
Right after the war, yeah?
Yeah, they had the draft back then. I don't know if kids today know what the draft is.
No, they should.
But at 18, we all had to go.
Yeah. Where all did you serve?
Well, I've had some wonderful duty stations. I was 3 years recruiting in Indianapolis.
Did you?
I spent 2 years in Washington, D.C., 2 years Copenhagen, Denmark, part of 4 years in Nam. Got around a lot, spent a year, almost 2 years in Cuba. So
In where?
In Cuba, Guantanamo Bay.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, one of our other guests spent time there.
so they was pretty nice duty stations, all things
Yeah, it
considered.
sounds like it. Except Vietnam.
Yeah, my job was a good one. I was in and out of country every month, so it wasn't that bad.
What's your highlights?
Probably 2 years American Embassy, Copenhagen, Denmark.
Yeah.
The embassy at that time rented Danish office space, so we could not wear a uniform, strictly civilian clothes job. Got paid a living allowance by the State Department as well as our regular Marine Corps salary, so I didn't draw a Marine Corps check for 2 years, so that was kind of a nice retirement right off the bat.
Yeah.
But that was probably the best job that I had. When I was at the Marine Barracks at 8th and I in Washington, D.C., when President Truman got inaugurated, the Secret Service came in and took 8 men to augment their detachment for Inauguration Day. So I spent probably 12 hours, no more than 25 feet from President Truman all day long.
Oh.
And then when his daughter came to Denmark for a visit for a week, they took 2 Marines and we spent 8 hours a day with her. It might have been outside her bedroom door, but for 8 hours a day, 2 Marines and a Secret Service guy took care of her over there. So it made a pretty interesting job, that part of it.
Yeah.
When you was in the embassy, you was, of course, talking to Americans. Did you have a language barrier problem?
Yes,
over
to
there?
start with. Nowadays they have to learn the language of the country they're in. But those days, I remember late at night somebody banging on the elevator door, and I walked out there, and somebody was holding up a little sign that said "Fire." I found out later, fire in Danish is 4, and he was trying to collect 4 Danish krona. But not knowing the language at that time, then I quickly had to call all the people, and then they explained it to me. But that was the first or second week in country, so that was acceptable.
Sure.
Later on, I got to be a pretty good English-speaking bartender in my spare time.
There you go. Very good.
Everybody evacuate, did they?
No, there was nobody in the embassy at that hour.
Okay.
When the way that worked over there, any time that the embassy was closed for anything, the Marines went on duty, and then we stayed till they opened back up in 8-hour tours.
Yeah.
So you never, there's a section around Easter that the whole country practically shuts down, and at that point in time we just went on and stayed on. You know, it might be 2 weeks in a row, 8 on, 8 off, but all in all, it was very good duty.
You didn't have to stay in guard, though. You probably was able to move around, and walk around.
Yeah, we had duty stations that you had the time clock. You know, you punch in because you've been here at the right time.
Sure.
And the way it worked is the embassy was on the 6th floor, the Mutual Security Agency was on the 5th floor, and in another wing of the building, the consul was on the 2nd floor. So we were on the move that whole time that we were there, you know, as far as that went.
Top secret clearance.
Yeah, very.
Mm-hmm.
And
Understand.
third generation American.
Understand. Okay. Well, that's quite a scrutiny they go through for that.
Yeah, sure it is.
Yeah, my mother was quite upset the day that FBI and Navy intelligence knocked on the door and said, "We want to talk to you about your son." She had no idea what was going
Right.
on. So that kind
But,
of bothered her a little bit.
Yeah, it's all necessary.
Yeah.
Sure.
What was you in your 20s then, or how old was you?
Oh, let's see. I was over there. I was 26, 25 when I went to Denmark.
Yeah.
I was a sergeant then. Matter of fact, I think at that time were all sergeants and above. I don't
Okay.
think we had. Yeah, we did. No, we did have some corporals, but we were brand new. It was not until the early '50s that the embassies really started to put Marines in as their guards. Up to that time, most of them had civilian guards. And in Copenhagen, the ambassador went in on a Saturday morning, found no security guard, and he was out in the parking lot washing his car. So the next year, the Marines went to Denmark. That was '51.
Things changed.
Well, actually, the first Marines were there in '50.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So at our convention, I'm called an old timer because I was there in '51. And there are not many of those people still around. I'm kind of lucky that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Haha, that goes way back. I'm on the right side there, and I'm receiving my commission to staff sergeant from my lieutenant colonel in charge of recruiting down there, and I cannot remember his name, but they were all killed in Korea eventually. The senior members down there, which would have been the master gunnery sergeant, the major, and the colonel, were all killed later in Korea.
And you missed Korea then, some way.
Yeah, I was in Indian Head, Maryland, and I was volunteered 3 times to go, and all they wanted was artillerymen and infantrymen. I think we were 102 in the command, and they took 52 of them. And they were 90% casualties in 30 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
As a result, they sent me to State Department school, and I ended up in Denmark, which is maybe it paid to volunteer. I don't know. That's the only time it ever did.
Yeah.
You consider yourself one of the lucky ones, then?
Very lucky.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say
And,
so.
you know, I told my wife later on, I had spent a couple of years in and out of Vietnam and came back to the States and volunteered to go back, and she said, "You're crazy." And I said, "No." I said, "Look where I was when Korea went on," and I said, I'm a Marine, I have to go. So
Yeah.
I spent then another 2 years at Chulai and helped build division headquarters there while I was down there.
You was married most of the time you was in the service?
Married a Danish girl in 1953 that I'd
yeah.
met at the embassy. They cannot do that today.
Can't they?
Back then it was a 2-year tour of duty. Nowadays you spend 1 year at each of 3 different posts. You cannot have any contact with local population, any place. And I think that's silly because the Danes are the greatest people in the world.
Yeah,
But
sure. Sure,
that's just how it's changed over the years.
yeah.
And it's an extraordinarily impressive ceremony. Now, when you see the graduation for the Marines that are going to go out to the embassy, their name is called, they march up on stage, and there's a world map, and it shows where they're going to be their duty station. And there's countries I've never heard of in my life. They were not in our geography lessons in high school, I know that.
Right.
But it's fascinating. And we have to replace 1,500 Marines a year at embassies, and the call is getting greater, so.
They only allow you to stay so long at a certain station, is that it?
A
or
year
what?
now.
A year, 1 year at a station, then
Yeah.
you change. That's to keep you from getting too familiar with,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's probably good too, since you can't have anything to do with the local populace,
Right.
to just be able to move someplace else.
Yeah.
And it's strange because now there have been people that have been on that duty a couple times, and they would not let us have a second tour of embassy duty back then.
Okay.
Just like they wouldn't let me extend on recruiting duty when I was in Indianapolis. And yet I came back from Okinawa TAD, and they were going to take me and send me to recruiter school. I said, that's crazy. I've already been there.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty good job recruiting, since I was almost home, you know.
Yeah, but it's spit and polish all the time, right?
Well, yeah. But Marines put on a pretty good show
Yes, they do.
when it comes to that.
That uniform is outstanding,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, but we did that for 3 years, and we shipped an excess of quota for 3 years out of Indianapolis. So
Great.
Chicago up there, they loved us because when they needed 2 or 3 extra at the end of the month, we could always go out and get them for them. So that worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But that was an enjoyable tour too. Got to meet a lot of people, do a lot of strange things. So,
Yeah. When you was in Vietnam, what was your duties there? You said it was pretty nice.
I ran Division Special Services. Division Special Services, we supplied company level whatever they wanted for morale for the troops. I had 2 officers that were assigned, been relieved of their duty in a combat company, so I had a Marine Corps captain walk into the general and said, let the sergeant do what he needs to do to get the job done. And they were ready to put it in writing from the Inspector General, so I did all the buying, all the receiving, all the disposition of the property, and kept the books. Biggest license to steal in the world.
A lot of midnight requisitions.
And didn't have to do that, had tons of money. We carried back then an average daily checking account balance of $250,000. And I could tell them, sign me 100 blank checks and 100 blank purchase orders, and cut me orders to go any place I wanted to go for 2 or 3 weeks, and I'd be gone, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they put that much trust in me. It's kind of nice to know that they do that. But
Yeah.
I had known the auditors for years. I was an accountant by trade, and generally, after I broke my leg playing ball down in Cuba, it was wherever there's a fund that's having a problem or they're short stuff, send them in to fix it. So that's what I did. Probably 15 years troubleshooter for the auditors. But I did that job pretty well over there. Got them what they wanted.
Obviously, you knew what you was doing, so
Yeah,
the auditor's
if
probably very friendly to you, yeah.
if you don't know what you're doing, then you're in a lot of trouble because the Marine Corps says you have stripes on your arm, you do the job. It may not be your field, but you better go and do the job. So.
Yeah. This was after you was in Denmark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they,
Yeah, I was
they
for-
knew you.
Yeah, they knew me pretty well in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And a funny story, 'cause I played basketball for Henderson Hall in 1946. And in 1948, I was out that summer because I tore the stomach muscles and I couldn't bend over. So I had to come home and recuperate. And I went back in the fall of 1948, and I walked through the Marine barracks at 8th and I in Washington, D.C., carrying a sea bag, and somebody yelled, "That's Corporal Lee in basketball practice at 1 o'clock. Marine Corps was pretty small back then. Everybody knew everybody.
Sure.
I think we were down to like 40,000 or so after World War II.
Yeah.
I know because I qualified for OCS out of boot camp, and there was no chance. They were trying to get rid of officers. They didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah. Yeah. They. I think it was Mr. Truman that knocked the Marine Corps way back.
Yeah, but it was also Mr. Truman saved the Marine Corps. So.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
good, because they sure needed them.
Well, see, when Korea broke out, we could not man a division from the east and the west coast.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough Marines for one division.
Yeah.
So the bill to abolish the Marine Corps was on Truman's desk when the Korean War broke out. probably why we have a Marine Corps yet today. He was just extraordinarily impressed by what they were able to do.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it, but I was kind of like being a Marine.
Well, we have nothing but respect for the Marine Corps.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we was both Army and artillery to a certain extent, and we look at the Marine Corps and we see hand-to-hand combat.
No, I was not one of those, but I did what I did very well. I know
First
that.
in on invasions, so forth. And
Yeah.
so our respect is there, believe me.
And it was done by 18 and 19-year-olds.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
You know,
But
I know when I went into the Marine Corps in '46, just nothing, a whole bunch of kids, and we ended up at a place called USMC, South Carolina. And it changed very quickly overnight when everybody was skylarking, having a good time at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the drill instructor walked in and said, "Give me 50 and shut up." And they didn't, and give me 100 and then shut up. The time we got to 150, they were pretty quiet. That's a lot of push-ups to do at one time.
hear a
I don't
pin-
care what age.
You could hear a pin drop, huh?
Yes, you could the rest of the night, but that's a cultural shock to anybody coming out of high school. But yet, they're just amazing what they did. A drill instructor will take 75 individuals and make them one unit, and that's an extraordinarily hard thing to do.
yeah.
Fortunately, I never had to do that. I was interviewed for that job, and the commandant said the 3 best Marines that we have, those on the drill field, those that do the recruiting, and those that go to embassy duty. And I did 2 out of 3 and was interviewed for the 3rd, so I'm pretty proud of what I did while I was there.
So you retired from the Corps?
22 years retirement, yeah. Nice paycheck every month.
I'm sure it's appreciated.
When they finally discovered I was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, they activated another division, and I was the only NCO that didn't get promoted. And then they find out that my service record book had been at Kansas City for 3.5 years and never went in front of a promotion board. So they gave me 3.5 years back pay and allowance and said, "Stay, you'll get promoted every time your name comes up because now there's administrative error after your name." And I thought, no, I'm 40 and it's easier to get a job in civilian life at 40 than it would be at 50.
Yeah, sooner or later you got to come back to civilian life, right?
Yeah,
So it's a decision you make along the way.
I came back and became a banker, so it's a good job. I wasn't a typical banker because I might be working in the office at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've had the police knock on my office and ask me what I was doing at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Robbing the bank, of course.
Well, the Marine Corps took individuals and taught them, you do your job. You do it to the best you know how. That's all I can ask of you. And look at this young guy. He's doing that now.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different world from when we were there, but these kids today, and they have to go twice as much as we do.
Well, I think we all went into service as kids.
Yeah, we did.
And you soon become men, don't you?
Very
It matures
quickly.
you very quickly.
Very
And,
quickly.
You look back on it and you say, there was a positive thing.
It was.
It was a positive
I'd do it
thing.
again. I know different
Sure.
things. I'd do something different now, but I'd go back and do it again.
And
I had that much enjoyment.
you'd recommend it,
Oh yeah,
sure.
good heavens! I got to see the world.
It was kind to you, yes.
Yeah, I got to meet people I never would have seen. I've sat at a table and had lunch with Danny Kaye.
Oh, did you?
Didn't expect a little kid out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, to ever do that. And I've had dinner with kings and queens and ambassadors, and it's a wonderful life to look back on.
Yeah.
And the reason we did that is whenever the embassy had an open seat for either a boy or a girl to fill out their tables for their dinners, we had 2 Marines that they picked, and they had 2 of their secretaries that they picked. So we got to eat a lot of nice banquets while we were there.
Rough duty.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do it, but it's
Somebody
rough duty.
has to do it. That's as bad as
I
the Mermaid Festival up in that they did up in North Webster
Yeah.
with all the bathing beauties on the floats. Tough duty, but somebody had to do it.
Yeah, nobody had to.
We understand.
Oh, anyway.
So it was pretty tough then. What your duties?
Yeah, I probably had as good a career as anybody could ever had in the Marine Corps
Yeah.
for what I got to do where I was at. And most of the time I was my own boss. You know, you had an officer, but they get your job done, you know. And I remember on Okinawa, I got called in and the general was on the code line. He said he wants to talk to you real bad. And I said, okay. And I went in and General Fields got on and he said, Sergeant, he said, you know Colonel Sadler? And I said, yes, sir, he's a supply officer. He said, Colonel Sadler can't fly anything into Chulai. And I said, no, sir. I said, there's a full colonel up here who gives a Red Ball Express on anything that gets flown from Futima Air Force Base on Okinawa down to Chulai. And he said, they just unloaded 10,000 pounds of special services gear. Well, I said, yes, sir. I just flew that out this morning. I said, does the general want to know how I did that? And he said, no, just keep up the good work. So, see, I bypassed all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it was get the job done. I delivered a morning newspaper. You know, Stars and Stripes would be 3 or 4 days old. I'd give them the morning newspaper. The Seabees for morning newspaper gave me a Jeep to drive around in. You know, Special Services took care of my troops. To drive, well, we were Special Services, but the general would stand outside and I'd drive by and hand him his morning newspaper. And it was a good job.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade that for anything.
When you was in Okinawa, or when was you in Okinawa?
Let me see, 60
Oh,
MC3. I was at the MSC.
Okay.
I got 4, 5, 6, and 7 Okinawa and Vietnam.
yeah. It's pretty well built back up then, Okinawa.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had three Marine bases alone on Okinawa. It was funny because the Marines were the only branch of service that couldn't have their wives out there. Which I guess they figured if war breaks out, the Marines are going to stay and fight, and then everybody else is going to be evacuated.
Yeah.
So I was in the hospital, and they said, well, we can't cure you. We have to send you back to duty or back to the States. I said, okay. So they said, we're going to send you back to duty. I said, okay. And my wife was teaching school at Fort Harrison, and the general said, my wife said, your husband is that sick, we'll send you to Okinawa. Just teach school out there. And the Marine Corps in their infinite wisdom said, well, if your wife's coming out here, we'll have to send you back to States. I said, then why don't you send me back to States now? Well, we can't do that. I said, you just told me you could. They had no answer for that. But that's typical military.
Yeah.
Red tape.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
And where else was you? You got Denmark,
Guantanamo.
Vietnam, and
Guantanamo Bay in Cuba for 2 years.
yeah,
My daughter was born down there.
at Guantanamo.
Yeah.
I see.
Which became interesting citizenship-wise because her mother was a Danish citizen at that time. So my daughter at birth got citizenship papers from 3 different countries, automatically American because I was.
Yeah.
But had she been born the following year in '56, then she could have had dual citizenship, but they didn't allow that in '55.
No, what was the third one? Not
Danish,
Danish.
Cuban, or American.
I didn't. I figured that since it was Guantanamo Bay, that'd be American territory.
It's only leased.
Yeah, that's true.
That was kind of funny. We had a consular officer come on the base once a month, but my wife needed a re-entry permit down there, and they could not do that on the base proper. She had to go to the consulate in Santiago, Cuba, because that was American soil. But we rented Guantanamo Bay, so I guess if it's leased, you can't do that.
Okay.
Was you pretty much confined to the base down there?
Well, there wasn't a heck of a lot else to do. I made shore patrol. If we had 4 Marines go on Liberty, then we had to furnish 1 Marine NCO for shore patrol to augment the Navy.
But you didn't mingle with you didn't go outside the gates?
No. No need to. Castro was in the hills outside the back gate. He was nobody then.
Yeah.
It was 20, 30-minute ride across the bay to get into a little town called Caminera. I had enough service in that time where my wife I could get quarters on the bays. So there was just absolutely no need. We had everything down there. We had our own theaters, we had our own exchanges, our own commissaries. It was always a happy day of the month when the Yippee boat came in, which we supplied everything with fresh vegetables and stuff, fresh milk and that.
Do any fishing?
No, I didn't like fish.
Oh,
So I never caught anything I wouldn't eat. So
yeah.
to this day, I've never cast a line in the water.
I'll be darned.
Learned to eat fish after I had a heart attack, but
Yeah.
no.
Well, we got a couple of minutes yet. What would you like to add?
You don't want to get me started. I always figured I could do 5 minutes on anything. Learned that in recruiter school.
Well, you got 2 minutes.
When you
Learned
went,
that in recruiter school. They said when they were teaching us, you'd go up to the instructor at speech class, and you would draw from a hat the group that you were speaking to and how long your speech was. And you had about 2 minutes to figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about to this group. And that was kind of interesting for someone who used to be afraid to death to make a speech to anybody, you know.
Yeah.
And not one of those things you learned. So but I had wonderful duty stations every place. In Washington, D.C., that was just, that may have been one of the reasons I went back in the Marine Corps in '48. Other than the fact I had seen Washington D.C. and it was like another life away from Fort Wayne, and I thought, no, I don't want to stay in Fort Wayne. And then my father died in '48, and my mother and I decided how I could figure out where I could stay in, and the Marine Corps was ready to give me a hardship discharge. Was probably the best decision that Mom and I ever made.
Yeah.
You know, was for me to go back because I've been the world over and have many stories to tell about many places and many things.
Yeah. Well, Vernon, we're out of time. I appreciate you
It's
being
been
our
a
guest.
pleasure.
And thank you for your service.
You're quite, and yours too.
Well,
thank you for your
We're,
service, Bernie.
we're in the same age group,
Yeah.
and yours is yet to all come.
You're still with it.
Yes, sir.
No,
Yeah.
you still want me
Very
here?
Yeah, for a minute or two.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. If you see a veteran or somebody in uniform, just walk up to them and say thank you for your service. Thank you and good night.
Access Fort Wayne offers reflections of our community. Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne are a service of the Allen County Public Library. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting organizations. For more information about creating your own television program with Access Fort Wayne, call 421-1250.
Hello, and welcome to our show, The American Veteran. I'm Dale Parrish, your host. Carl Fowler is